This is a summary of pages 1 through 20 of Plessy versus Ferguson and pages 51 through 62 of The Mismeasure of Man and Their Connections, and also questions for the class. So these pages of Plessy versus Ferguson cover racial segregation between Caucasians and African Americans in the 19th century. This segregation was due to Jim Crow laws. African Americans and Caucasians were segregated in many public places like railroad cars on trains, for a specific example, restrooms, restaurants, schools, even water fountains. And this was referred to as separate but equal, which implies that black people will still get equal treatment even though there are separate facilities. This actually wasn't the case though. There was still a lot of social inequality. There were differences in treatment in public places as well in the job markets for Caucasians and African Americans. The Jim Crow laws were actually meant to help reconstruct the South after slavery was abolished by the 15th Amendment, but it actually didn't reconstruct it. It actually just kept it segregated. And then on the other hand, pages 51 through 62 of The Mismeasure of Man cover the subject of craniology during the 1800s. This type of science was what people based their beliefs of intelligence off of. Basically, the larger the skull, the larger the brain, and the larger the brain is, the smarter you must be. We of course know now that this isn't the truth, but it made sense to people back then because they didn't have anything better to really go off of. The main connection that I see between these two readings is the ranking of the races. This time period is before people understood that biologically all of our races are very similar. And The Mismeasure of Man discusses craniology. Now, things like craniology were what white people used to justify creating things like the Jim Crow laws and doing separate but equal, to keep African American people living at an inferior level to them, because they're saying that we're not as intelligent, but that actually just wasn't true. It wasn't true, and so it's good that that's been disproven now. And my 3 questions for the class: do you think black people actually believed that intelligence was based off of skull size, or did they just know in their hearts that they were actually equal? Second question: why didn't white people feel comfortable sharing public facilities with black people? We do it now, fine. I don't know what the problem was. And then third question: what does separate but equal actually have to do with levels of intelligence? Why? Because someone is perceived as not being as smart as you, why can't you share like a facility with them? It doesn't really add up. And so those are my 3 questions for the class. Thank you.